Just then, the Little Mermaid's sisters, desperate to save her, had cut off their long hair and traded it to the deep-sea witch for a dagger. They swam to the Little Mermaid and handed her the dagger, explaining that if she used it to kill the prince and let his blood drip onto her feet, she would regain her mermaid form and could return to the sea to reunite with her family. Deep in the boundless ocean lies a magical underwater kingdom, as enchanting as a dream. This kingdom is built upon sturdy yet beautiful coral reefs, where countless fish dart and swim among the vibrant structures. At the heart of the kingdom stands a grand crystal palace. Its dome is adorned with countless luminous pearls, shining like stars in the night sky and illuminating the entire realm. The Sea King and his family reside in this palace. The Sea King and his queen have 7 daughters, each as lovely as a flower, but the youngest mermaid princess is the most beautiful of all. Her skin is as smooth and radiant as polished jade, glowing softly in the water. Her eyes, deep and clear like the ocean, hold an endless mystery, while her long, flowing hair sways gently in the currents, shimmering with an enchanting luster. Not only is the Little Mermaid breathtakingly beautiful, but she also possesses a voice of unparalleled sweetness. Her singing is like a crystal-clear mountain stream, capable of piercing through the depths of the ocean and reaching every corner of the sea. Her voice is undoubtedly the most beautiful and moving sound in all the ocean. One day, the queen, watching her youngest daughter play freely in the sea, told her, "My child, when a mermaid princess turns 15, she is allowed to rise to the surface and see the wondrous world above the sea." From that moment on, the Little Mermaid was filled with an insatiable longing for the world above. She eagerly counted the days until she could grow up and witness the world beyond the ocean with her own eyes. While waiting, the Little Mermaid would listen to her sisters' tales of the human world. They spoke of towering mountains covered in lush greenery, vast grasslands where horses galloped and herds of cattle roamed, and bustling towns filled with laughter and vibrant life. These descriptions took root in the Little Mermaid's heart like magical dreams, fueling her desire to explore the world above. Finally, on her 15th birthday, the Little Mermaid rose to the surface with a heart full of excitement. As her head emerged from the water, the warm sunlight bathed her face, and she was instantly captivated by its gentle touch. She looked around, her eyes drawn to the horizon where the sea met the sky. There, a magnificent ship sailed into view. From a distance, the Little Mermaid could see that the ship was decorated with lanterns and bustling with activity. It turned out to be a celebration for the birthday of a handsome prince. The prince stood at the bow of the ship, tall and noble, his golden hair gleaming like the most dazzling gem in a crown. The moment the Little Mermaid laid eyes on him, her heart was stirred and she fell in love at first sight. However, just as she was lost in admiration, the calm sea suddenly turned treacherous. Dark clouds gathered overhead and a fierce storm erupted. Thunder roared, lightning flashed, and torrential rain poured down. Enormous waves, like wild beasts, crashed against the ship, tossing it violently. The vessel struggled helplessly, like a leaf caught in a tempest. Suddenly, a massive wave struck the ship, and the prince was thrown into the sea. Before he could even struggle, he began to sink rapidly. Seeing this, the Little Mermaid's heart clenched in fear. Without hesitation, she swam toward him, fighting against the raging currents. With powerful strokes of her tail, she reached the prince and lifted him to the surface. She carried him to a nearby beach, gently laying him on the soft sand. Tenderly, she brushed the hair from his face, her eyes filled with worry and care. After a while, the prince slowly opened his eyes. In his dazed state, he caught a glimpse of a beautiful girl who had saved him. But just then, voices called out in the distance. Rescuers were approaching. Not wanting to be seen, the Little Mermaid reluctantly slipped back into the sea, hiding behind a rock to secretly watch over the prince. A group of people rushed to the beach and helped the prince to his feet. The prince looked around, seemingly searching for something, but he never caught another glimpse of the Little Mermaid who had saved him. Watching the prince being led away, the Little Mermaid felt a deep sense of loss. Yet she understood that she and the prince belonged to different worlds, and she could only bury her feelings deep within her heart. After returning to the ocean depths, the Little Mermaid fell into a state of melancholy. She often swam alone to the spot where she had saved the prince, quietly reminiscing about their brief encounter. Her longing to see the prince again burned like an unquenchable flame, growing fiercer with each passing day. She confided in the queen, who gently stroked her hair, her eyes filled with both tenderness and helplessness. The queen told her, "My child, though we mermaids may live for 300 years, we do not possess souls. When we die, we simply turn into sea foam. Humans, on the other hand, though their lives are short, have souls and can attain eternity in heaven. Therefore, a mermaid and a human can never be together." The little mermaid felt even more lost and heartbroken upon hearing this. She yearned to see the prince again, but was painfully aware of the insurmountable divide between their worlds. Just as the little mermaid was sinking into despair, her sisters told her that the prince's palace was located near the coast. This news sparked a glimmer of hope in her heart. She secretly swam to the shore and gazed from afar at the magnificent palace. To her delight, she caught sight of the prince again, watching him come and go from the palace. Her admiration for him grew even stronger, but she knew that mermaids could not interact with humans, which filled her with sorrow. One of her sisters then told her about a deep-sea witch who lived in a dangerous part of the ocean. This witch, they said, could perform magic and might be able to help her. However, the witch's assistance would come at a price. The little mermaid hesitated, knowing that if she sought the witch's help and left the ocean, she would never be able to return to her family and the life she knew. The thought tormented her, but her love for the prince ultimately gave her the courage to seek out the deep-sea witch. The little mermaid swam cautiously through the twisting, dark trenches of the ocean. As she ventured deeper, the water grew darker, the pressure intensified, and it felt as though invisible hands were trying to hold her back. The jagged rocks on either side of the trench were covered in sharp spines, resembling monstrous claws. After what felt like an eternity, she finally arrived at the witch's lair. The place was eerie and foreboding, surrounded by massive black rocks draped with strange, writhing seaweed that seemed alive. At the center of this darkness stood a small hut made of bones and shells, the home of the deep-sea witch. Summoning her courage, the little mermaid entered the hut. The air inside was thick with acrid smoke, making it hard to breathe. Through the haze, a figure emerged. The witch was small and hunched, her skin wrinkled like dried bark. Her eyes glowed like burning red embers, radiating an unsettling light. The witch looked at the little mermaid with a sly smile, as if she had been expecting her. She listened quietly to the little mermaid's plea, then slowly produced a potion that could transform her into a human. Handing the potion to the little mermaid, the witch explained its effects and the dangers in a raspy, cold voice. Surian. If the little mermaid drank the potion, she would feel as though an invisible sword were slicing through her tail, and the pain would be so intense that she would faint. When she awoke, she would have human legs, but every step would feel like walking on knives. Moreover, if she failed to win the prince's love and marry him, she would not gain a soul and would dissolve into sea foam at dawn on the day after the prince married another. The price for the potion was the little mermaid's voice, her most precious possession, the means by which she expressed her emotions and brought joy to others. Torn and conflicted, the little mermaid wrestled with her decision. But her love for the prince ultimately prevailed, and she nodded in agreement to the witch's terms. The witch smiled with satisfaction. As the little mermaid drank the potion, the witch waved her wand, and a dark light enveloped the little mermaid. She felt excruciating pain, as though countless needles were piercing her body. Her tail split and transformed into two slender legs, while her beautiful voice was lost forever, left behind in the witch's hut. Weak and trembling, the little mermaid collapsed to the ground. The witch coldly cast her out of the hut. For the first time, the little mermaid stood on human legs, her body swaying unsteadily. Every step was agonizing, as though she were walking on thorns. Yet her growing love for the prince gave her the strength to press on. Step by painful step, she made her way toward the shore, each movement a testament to her determination. Finally, she reached the coast near the prince's palace. Slowly, she rose to her feet, though every step was torture. She began walking toward the palace, but before she could get far, she collapsed and lost consciousness. At that moment, the prince happened to be passing by the beach and saw the unconscious little mermaid. When she awoke, the prince was utterly captivated by her beauty. Though others found her too quiet and reserved, the prince was deeply drawn to her, especially by her graceful dancing. Soon the little mermaid became the prince's companion. They often strolled together through the palace gardens, where vibrant flowers bloomed, filling the air with their fragrance. Petals drifted in the breeze, creating an atmosphere of pure romance. They also sat on the rocks by the sea, watching the golden hues of the setting sun dance on the waves, as if the entire world had been painted in gold. However, such blissful moments were fleeting. The king and queen arranged a political marriage for the prince with a princess from a neighboring kingdom. Upon learning of this, the prince firmly refused, declaring that he loved only the girl who had saved him on the beach. But by chance, the prince discovered that the princess from the neighboring kingdom was the one who had found him on the beach that day. Believing her to be his savior, he expressed his love for her, and soon a grand royal wedding was held. On the day of the wedding, the palace was adorned with lanterns and decorations, bustling with excitement. Nobles dressed in lavish attire filled the halls, their laughter and chatter echoing everywhere. The prince and princess stood on a beautifully decorated wedding ship, receiving blessings from the crowd. Meanwhile, the little mermaid hid alone in a corner by the shore, sorrowfully awaiting the dawn that would turn her into sea foam. Just then, the little mermaid's sisters, desperate to save her, had cut off their long hair and traded it to the deep sea witch for a dagger. They swam to the little mermaid and handed her the dagger, explaining that if she used it to kill the prince and let his blood drip onto her feet, she would regain her mermaid form and could return to the sea to reunite with her family. The little mermaid stared at the dagger in her hand, her heart torn. She watched the prince and princess smiling happily, tears blurring her vision. Memories of her time with the prince flashed through her mind like a film. In the end, she couldn't bring herself to harm him. As dawn broke, she gently tossed the dagger into the sea and leaped into the water. After floating in the sea for what felt like an eternity, the little mermaid realized she hadn't turned into foam as the witch had foretold. Instead, she felt herself transforming into a glowing, radiant soul. It turned out that her selfless and kind heart, which transcended the boundaries of race, had earned her an immortal soul, allowing her to ascend to the realm of the gods. In the light, the little mermaid's soul seemed to see the happy smiles of the prince and princess, as well as the comforting gazes of her family in the underwater kingdom. Carrying this love and blessing, she drifted gently toward the realm of the gods, embarking on a new and hopeful journey.